And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Chapter 14, verses 22 to 36. After the crowd ate and were satisfied, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. Beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." And when they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent word around to all that region and brought to him all who were sick and implored him that they might only touch the fringe of his garment. And as many as touched it were made well. The Gospel of the Lord. Dear friends, a wonderful first reading, which is pretty long, of course, 17 verses. And again, even the gospel reading is not very short, but a beautiful narration of what really happened after feeding of the 5,000. A beautiful readings for us to reflect. And from the first reading, we see a dramatic event happening in the court of King Zedekiah, and you have two different prophets, Prophet Hananiah and Prophet Jeremiah, and both of them are there in the presence of so many people. And Hananiah, he is giving a wonderful message. It appears as if it is Yahweh's message. He says, of course, the problem the Babylonians are going to give to the people of Judah is not going to be everlasting. In 2 days' time, everything that they have taken away is going to come back. So this exile is not a long one. It's a very, very short experience, and the time is going to come back for them to live a normal life. So the yoke is going to be broken. And of course, yoke in the ancient Middle East was a sign of slavery. And his words gave a lot of hope, kind of a false hope to the people, and people are very happy about the message of Hananiah. And that is where Jeremiah confronts him in front of everyone, and he says, "What are you talking? This yoke is going to be replaced by the iron one, which cannot be broken." And of course, we can dramatize the whole thing and imagine how Jeremiah was carrying the yoke on his shoulder, and Hananiah takes it and breaks it in front of everyone and tries to give this message, saying, "This is a message of Yahweh. You are going to be freed. You are going to be liberated in 2 years' time." But Jeremiah stays strong and he says, no, this is going to be yoke made of iron. You're going to really struggle. This is a punishment for all your sins and sins of pride and moving away from Yahweh. At the end, Jeremiah says, you being a false prophet, manipulating the message of Yahweh, you're going to die this year itself. And my dear friends, Hananiah died that same year. Words of Jeremiah became true, and we know what really happened when this whole exile took place by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. It did not just last 2 years, it was a pretty long slavery, exile. This is a beautiful a story or a scene that actually gets us into our reality today. What we really want is, we want people to say something nice to us. This is what we call it as going along with the flow. Hananiah is going along with the flow. He is saying something nice to the people. People will like it, they will appreciate it. But it is not the complete truth. Of course, there were a lot of truth inside this content, but it was manipulated. It was trying to give a kind of a false hope to the people. Whereas Jeremiah spoke truth and he created enemies, but he represented God, and that is the truth that he spoke. He stood very strong for what he said and remained closer to God. Just coming to the gospel passage today, again, we can, being a weekday and beginning of a month, I don't want to make it very long, but at the same time, just for us to start this month in a very nice way. A beautiful reading, and we can reflect a lot of messages from here, but of course I will take it in one particular direction. Here we see Jesus walking on the water at the fourth watch. Fourth watch would be from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., which means the whole night he was spending in prayer. And even before that, after the multiplication of the bread, Jesus forced the disciples to get into the boat and go to the other side of the shore. You need not really create a big scene here, trying to become popular, trying to make friends, trying to create a fan club. Get into the boat and go to the other side and spend time alone in prayer. And Jesus also did move away from there. And 3 o'clock in the morning, he's just walking on the water. And we already see the disciples are struggling with the storm. This walking on the water reminds us of something. In the beginning of the book of Genesis, the Spirit was hovering on the water, and we see Jesus walking on the water. A symbolic way of saying the Creator is walking on the water. He is a creator. And water, sea, is always said it's a place where all the demons and devils were living. So it is overpowering the evil one, and the Creator is walking on the water. And of course, he is just fresh after his prayers, and is moving towards the people, towards the humanity. And that's where he encounters the disciples who were in panic. And of course, we see how Peter, very interesting guy, he also wanted to walk on the water. And Jesus invites him. And we really need to appreciate Peter for doing this, to have a certain amount of courage to walk on water. And he did have this privilege of walking on the water. But what really happened when he saw the wind, when his gaze was away from Jesus, he started sinking. And immediately, as we read in the Psalm 69, he asked for help. Lord, save me. And you should see the words. Jesus immediately lent his hand and pulled him up. Dear friends, in our lives, as we see in the first reading as well as in the gospel reading, there is one beautiful message that all of us can take home. And in the month of August, we can at the beginning of this month, we can follow this. Not only for the month of August, of course, for the whole of our life. There are times when we go with the flow, and there are times when there is a current which comes from the opposite direction, going against the storm. Going with the flow is always easy. Hananiah went with the flow, but that is not the truth, the reality. It was Jeremiah who walked against the storm. So also there are times when we have to move against the storm. What will happen is we go through an experience of getting drowned. Because of course we have so much of courage, we have so much of hope in God, but our own human vulnerabilities and weakness make us to drown. And all of us do have drowning experiences. But we shouldn't get drowned completely. We need to hope in God. We need to look up to God and say, God, save me, help me. And immediately God will stretch His hand and pull us out. During this pandemic, all of us are in a kind of a drowning situation, economically, psychologically, in various aspects we are getting drowned. We are drowning. But all that is expected from us, Lord, save me. And the Lord will surely save us. He will lift us up. Maybe it may not be directly lending His hand. Through someone else, at the right moment, people will come to our life to rescue us. Through, of course, sent by God Himself. So we should not get discouraged. At the same time, we should not get scared to go against the current. Let's not simply go with the flow. Everyone says this, everyone is doing. There is one thing which always we say, after all, everyone is doing. What is the problem if I do this? Everyone doing cannot justify what you are doing. We have to stand for truth, which demands going against the current. And going against the current, surely we will encounter a situation of getting drowned. Whenever we go through this situation of getting drowned, all that we need to do is look up to God and say, Lord, help me, Lord, save me. The Lord is always hovering around our life. He will lift us, He will lend His hand immediately, and He will pull us out of this drowning situation and give us life in abundance. That's all.